TipRanks presents Tip Talks, the only podcast where you can listen to the insights, discover the trends, and power up your investment portfolio. Investors, welcome to Tip Talks, a brand new podcast brought to you by TipRanks, a market-leading stock research site used by the Wall Street elites and thousands upon thousands of retail investors to help drive more profitable investment returns when it comes to the stock market. Joining me today is our in-house analyst, Yulia Vyman, and today we are talking all about the ins and outs of insider trading and why you need to jump onto TipRanks and utilize our insider trading tools to ensure that you are keeping up to date with all of these trading moves. Yulia, I want to welcome you to the show here with us today, and I want to immediately throw out my first question for you. What in the world is insider trading?
Well, first of all, you need to ask, what are insiders?
Brilliant.
Insiders are company executives or board members or those that have a large chunk of companies' shares, like above 10%. And those are the people that know exactly what's going on inside the company. That's why they're called insiders.
I love it. And what for beginner investors out there, or even more experienced investors who are out there utilizing our tools, and especially those who aren't, what exactly is the big deal, right, when it comes to insider trading? Why is that even considered an indicator that we should be factoring in as investors?
Well, as I said earlier, insiders know exactly what's happening within the company. So their actions can indicate whether they believe the company will succeed or something fishy is going on. If you see a heavy selling by people who are inside the company, then probably there is something wrong. In most of the cases with the company itself, sometimes it's something going on with the sector in which the company is, where the company belongs, or with the whole economy.
Sure.
But in most cases, if there is a trouble within the company and something bad is going to happen, people who know about it will want to do something about it to insulate themselves.
Sure. So it's really grabbing all these insider insights, really, that we can start to use as investors. Now, one question that I always get, whether it's friends, family, or even when I host the webinars here at TipRanks, is a lot of investors are asking, what's the big difference from an insider who trades informatively and one who does so uninformatively? Can you break down the difference between those two terms for us before we dive into all the mayhem here of insider trading?
It's very simple. A uninformative transaction is when, for example, you get options as an employee and you want to exercise them. And it doesn't mean anything. It's just that they're about to expire, or there is some other important date, and it's purely technical.
Sure.
That's one of the examples. It doesn't indicate anything about that insider's confidence in the company or insecurity about the future of the company. On the other hand, there are deliberate actions when a person decides to sell 2 million, say, of a company's stock deliberately.
Sure.
And then that person has to update the regulators about their actions, and it is informative because we know that someone inside the company decided to sell the stock or buy the stock.
Sure. Okay, so the key word there that I took from that was a deliberate action.
Yes.
And which would be very valuable information for me as an investor. Now, TipRanks is obviously known for analyst ratings. I mean, that's our big, right, like go-to, come look at TipRanks for our analyst ratings. Of course, then we have all the hedge fund activity as well as insider transactions that are being made that investors should also be well aware of. I want to ask you from the analyst standpoint, right? Because that is your profession. What is the amount of weight that we as investors should actually place on the insiders? Because I almost feel like, right, someone comes and they get to a stock page. We could take any stock, right, that's hot right now, NVIDIA, Apple, Google, any of them. And we see what is there on the stock analysis page, strong buy. Now that's exciting, but then sometimes we see the strong sell. That's nerve-wracking. And then we have insider transactions that are happening. Sometimes they're buys and sometimes they're sells. How much weight should we place on insiders versus analysts? What should we be doing? How do we kind of break down all this information?
Well, it depends on each case separately. I can't really quantify it, but we should look at both indicators. Both are important. With regards to analysts, they do their work. They analyze the company's financials, its markets, its prospects in the near-term future, and it's very important to take that into the account. On the other hand, insiders, as we said, they know exactly what's going on within the company. On the other hand, we don't really always know what caused that person to sell the stock. Maybe they need the money for something else. Like when Musk wanted to buy Twitter,
sure,
he sold the stock of Tesla. It didn't mean that he doesn't believe in the company. But of course, if you see I believe it rarely happen. It doesn't happen too often that a company is 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 and a strong buy, and there would be heavy selling. It doesn't happen too much. I haven't seen it, at least not too often.
Wishful thinking.
But well, there are all kinds of quirks. It takes time to update analyst opinions, Anyway, but investors should pay attention, especially in the cases when they are not totally confident in their decision. It's one of the tools to make that choice, whether to invest in a company or not.
Sure, I love it. I want to dig into this a little bit more here and kind of open this case for everyone, because, of course, again, TipRanks, we're all about the analyst ratings. And I'm going to admit something on this podcast. I'm not so sure I love analyst ratings. Can I say that on this podcast? Right. The reason being is because I feel like, well, yes, an analyst pours so much, time into doing their due diligence and understanding the investments, that they're looking into, or the stocks, the companies that they're looking into. What I am more intrigued by are the insiders at these companies who are really, right, they have the information that I really want at their fingertips, at their disposal, on their desk. Now, you just mentioned that an analyst is not always making a new rating on a stock. How many times a year does an analyst rate a stock, typically?
Depends, but usually it can be once a month, once a quarter. If
Sure.
there are significant changes, then it can be weekly. Depends on the company, on the issue, on what's going on, the situation.
Typically, it's not weekly, right? At least from what I've seen.
Not weekly,
okay, so it's like dire emergencies. Sometimes we can get a weekly update, and
let's hope it doesn't happen to our portfolio companies.
To kind of cover someone's bases, weekly updates, right? But usually, okay, so it could be on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
Which for me, when I think about that, and I say, okay, if an analyst rated a stock, doesn't matter what stock, we'll call it stock X. An analyst rates stock X. And, they do so, maybe, I don't know, in January. And they don't rate that stock again for another 6 months or, up to date where we are today. Does that rating still hold validity? Because for me, it's an outdated rating. However, sometimes I fall on a TipRanks page, right? And I start to do my due diligence. And I see an analyst rated a stock, again, like 3, 4, or 5 months ago. And while it may have been a strong buy then, what I start to factor in, right, is this economic environment. Has there been any changes or inputs to our economic environment? And there always is, right? A new day always gifts us with brand new economic inputs. And then on top of that, right, anything could happen when it comes to Mr. Market, right? Anything could happen. We could be up, we could be down. And then when I really start to look at and how I use the insider trading tool on TipRanks is how recent were the trades made. Because sometimes I see a trade that was made like 2 days ago. The analyst rated the stock, I don't know, 3 months ago. it almost seems like the insider now I should be putting more weight on. Do you see what I'm getting at? What do you think about that?
You've talked about a number of issues. First of all, yes, there is a problem of mostly it's smaller companies, medium size and small cap stocks that don't get rated as often as the large cap. If something happens to Nvidia or to Tesla, every analyst out there will be on it straight away. But if it's a 2 billion market cap company, it can take 5 months until somebody notices that something's going on there. Yes, there is that problem. And there are so many companies, you can't get them rated every week.
Sure.
And another subject you talked about is the insider. Yes, analysts look at insider trades too. When we analyze the companies, we do look at insider trading. Among other factors, of course, I look at the hedge funds, I look at the mutual funds that hold the company's stock, ETFs. I look at all the ownership structure of the company and the changes to the owner structure, because it can give some hints. When I compare two stocks and I'm not really sure which one is better,
sure,
company A is better at this and company B is better at that. This gives more dividend and this pays more dividend, and this has slightly higher growth numbers, and I like them both, and I put more weight on insider trading because it can give me some more confidence with regards to my choice.
Fascinating. Okay, so now that that's cleared up and out of the way, what I want to ask is, how would an investor come on to TipRanks and really use the insider trading tools that we have to actually find new stock ideas? And I ask that because I'm constantly looking for new stock ideas, and I feel like any good investor out there, they're not just going to stick to the same one or two stocks, right? They want to expand their portfolio, maybe diversification, right? Work that a little bit. But it's all about new stock ideas as well and finding good investments. Now, the one spot I always go to on TipRanks, this is almost how I really start my day on TipRanks. I will come over to this stock screener that we have, and I look at the economic backdrop for myself, right? I try to paint this picture for myself, where we are economically. And then I plug in what I like to call the safer stocks, right? So the mega caps, the large caps. Now I'm going to get to my insider trading tool, and I have the ability on TipRanks to actually input positive signals on insider trading and positive signals on hedge funds. Now that's where I typically go, but I want to pass it over to you and see how you're using TipRanks when it comes to the insider tools as an analyst.
Well, when I'm looking for ideas, of course, the screener is a very basic, is a go-to tool. But there are additional tools to use on TipRanks site. First of all, there is that tool called the Daily Insider Trading Tracker. It's a very cool thing where you can see what's hot with insiders now, which companies see most buying activity from insiders, and you can also watch the selling activity. You can see both ways. So it can be very valuable for investor to straight away filter out the companies that see heavy selling now, right at this moment. Another very useful tool that you can use is the insiders hot stocks.
Sure.
That's where when you're looking for investment ideas, you can see the stocks according to strategies. Whether you can filter by C-level strategy, event strategy, top rank strategy, and so on.
I actually, this tool is one of my favorites that we have here, right? Because it, again, as you mentioned, we have different strategies on TipRanks that one can use, to really filter out the stocks that perhaps they shouldn't be looking at, or if they want to use what I always say, right, to invest with the best, find the best insiders. So this tool actually allows us to compare the performance of these strategies, right, to either the S&P 500 or a specific sector. Now, when I go a step further, I can actually take a look at on TipRanks what strategy fares far better off than the others. And one that's always the top of the running here is major event strategy. Now, major event strategy, for all those who haven't jumped on TipRanks yet, is essentially when a major institutional investor makes a move and buys in or out of a position. But I want to throw this one back over at you. What is it about these major institutional investors you think that they have more information at their fingertips?
Oh, well, first of all, they have analysts working for them and checking every dot on the company's balance sheet. They also check the pulse of the market, of course. I wouldn't be surprised if they have inside information in different ways. And besides the moves of the big institutional investors, they move the stock.
Sure.
Imagine a large mutual fund selling a ton of company's stock. The stock will tank.
Sure.
So it's like a prophecy it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Sure.
Sometimes.
So
it's very important to look at this.
According to our data, because I have it here pulled up on the screen, with major event strategy, we're looking at an annual return rate here, average annual return rate of 6.29%, which is pretty good, right? Especially when the market is as uncertain as it is right now, and we're all looking for more certainty. Now, just to give everyone a gist of how this tool really works, that's all I did was I went over to the Insider Hot Stocks tool. I clicked on major event strategy, and now I find myself with a company here at the top, Blue Dolphin Energy. Now, just an example for anyone out there listening. This is not stock advice. Don't immediately buy the stock because I'm mentioning it, right? It's all about doing your due diligence. But right here, we have corporate insiders who place informative buys of what we have, Blue Dolphin Energy here, of shares worth $214,000 in the last 3 months. And if we scroll down, we get a nice comprehensive breakdown of who these insiders were. And we have none other than the CEO and president himself placing informative buys on Blue Dolphin Energy as, 14 days ago, 16 days ago, 3 months, 5 months, and 9 months ago. I mean, across the board, Mr. CEO and president over there of Blue Dolphin is really going in.
You just persuaded me to buy that company.
Did I sell it? Maybe I should head over to Wall Street at this point. I want to know now. So, okay, you're the analyst that we have, luckily in-house, and just as you've been in the field, literally in the field as an analyst. What are some stocks that you have, like right now, off the top of your mind that we can see if there's any insider trading activity going on that are hot stocks for you? What are some stocks? Let's take NVIDIA, actually. Instead of going, we'll go right to NVIDIA. So we're going to plug in NVIDIA. That's ticker symbol NVDA. And we're on TipRanks, heading over to check out what the insiders have been doing. And we can see here a very interesting trend of corporate insiders informatively selling. Get this, selling of shares worth $175+ million in the last 3 months. What could this really tell me?
I think that's total. I think the only informative sell is the director that sold 25 million, which is a lot. But you have to compare it to the size of the company and its market capitalization. When you look at NVIDIA's market cap, it's not that much, but still, if the trend continues, I would
flag this one.
I would
and
flag
put it on the
this one.
list.
Yeah, I would watch this closely to see what's going on. Well, NVIDIA's stock has risen so much, but that maybe some of its insiders decide that it's time to cash out on some profits. Maybe not all the stocks, but that's what I would do if I held lots of stocks of NVIDIA. I would probably sell some of it now.
Cash out and take a nice 25 million for yourself.
Why not?
I think I would do the same. What would be, at this point? So we used Insider Hot Stocks, the tool to find Blue Dolphin Energy, and then we even came off with one right off the top of our minds here, NVIDIA, because it's a hot stock right now. Everybody and their mother's talking about it, And now we're on their page. We see this informative sell by a director here for $25 million. Some people may be now inclined to actually sell out of their position, or some, right, depending on what's happening, an informative buy or sell, may be inclined to buy. What would be your next step? Because this is a signal, but what does it really mean? Like, what's the next step we should take in our due diligence process?
The next step would be to have a look at the insider that's been selling the stock. We at TipRanks help people know who to trust, and it doesn't only concern analysts, because we also rate insiders. If you didn't know, insiders, they get a rating according to their profitability of their transactions. They're basically their trading success. So this guy that sold Nvidia hasn't been very successful. I don't know why he sold it. Maybe he had to, maybe he had no other choice, or just decided that he needs the money. I wouldn't follow his steps, because he hasn't been very successful.
Sure. And now I'm looking at his profile here, because I think you hit the nail right on the head. We have a director level at NVIDIA that sold that $25 million. Just for everyone's own awareness here, he has a profitability in transactions only 41%. And so that means that when it comes specific here to NVIDIA, only 3 out of 20 of his transactions when it came to NVIDIA were profitable. So I love that you mentioned that point. And I want to just jump quickly over to say a man like Mr. Elon Musk over at Tesla, just to give everyone an example of the power of this tool. And if you're using it right and asking yourself the right questions, we can come over to Elon Musk's profile on TipRanks. And this is something that Yulia and I were actually having fun with before we jumped on the podcast, and took a look at Elon Musk's profitable transactions. Now, he has 44 out of 55 transactions that were profitable. Heck of a lot of better numbers here.
He knows what he's doing.
Exactly. That's what I love to hear and love to see here. An average return of 68.2%. Now, that's an insider, right? That when it comes to Tesla, a perfect example for all of us to be following and taking note of his trades. So just be aware of who you're following. As much as TipRanks is here for tracking and the analyst ratings, we're also here for insider activity and hedge fund activity. Now, investors, as we are sharing here on the podcast, you can find all of the tools and more on TipRanks. We want to invite you personally to use the insider trading tools that we have for you, especially as we end the year in a very uncertain environment. Just before we close out for today's podcast, Yulia, I just want to get your thoughts now and updated thoughts from last week in terms of the economics heading into this week and what we're kind of experiencing, because we're all really looking to get more information to get a better lead on how to invest. Can you give us like a 1-minute synopsis of what's going on in the week, what we should be focused on?
To make it really short, there is not too much new information. We've seen that the labor market has been softening, especially the wage growth, which is very important because it's one of the things that comes in, that is pushing upwards the inflation rate. So when we see the wage growth cooling, it makes us feel a little bit more optimistic.
Sure.
Optimistic, and lets us hope that the Federal Reserve will not hike, at least not too much from now on.
Sure. So hoping for better days ahead and crossing our fingers for hopefully not another hike. But most importantly here is using all the tools that we have on TipRanks, especially our insider trading tools. Now, investors, we will be back at it on Tip Talks next week, so be sure to catch us on the next podcast. And until then, I first want to say, Yulia, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Ari.
But until then, investors, we will see you all in the next one. TipRanks presents Tip Talks, the only podcast where you can listen to the insights, discover the trends, and power up your investment portfolio.